live.
We
Excellent.
are.
Hello. I was just telling Corrie that my YouTube keeps like disconnecting from the software, and it's like it'll be live again in 24 hours. And it's like, but I've been doing this for a year. So bear with me. We'll get it figured out here. In the meantime, we are live on LinkedIn and on 2 Facebook channels. So I'm so glad you're here. Our conversations are always so much fun. Corrie Myers is here. She is an incredible website and email copywriter with this amazing educational background. And I think that's part of what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about everything under the sun as normal, but we're going to talk about transitioning careers. Like I've always been in marketing, even though my degree is in anthropology and Spanish. I didn't realize I'd been a copywriter for 20 years until I sat down and I was like, oh, hey, this is what I've always been doing. And I can make a living doing just this, which I love. But your story is not all that different, like in terms of how you're aligning like these new ideas to engage people. So you were a teacher. What did that look like?
Yes, and also I want to mention I was a Spanish minor. You majored in Spanish?
Yeah, I had a second major.
That's awesome. Did you study abroad?
I did. I lived in Costa Rica for a semester. So
awesome.
I had probably half of what I needed to get a degree, like before that. And then after it, like pretty much everything I did counted towards Spanish, which is incredible. But also, I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about Spanish in a business capacity because I'm really good at conversational and ordering beer or like food or just striking up a conversation with people on the streets, particularly after I've had a beer and I can like lose all my inhibition, like the fact that I have this terrible accent. But I don't, everyone's like, oh, well, you could translate this into business. I'm like, nope, I really shouldn't. You don't want me to do that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, funny, my very first year teaching, the first thing I taught was Spanish because that was my minor and that was what they needed. So then I spent the rest of my career teaching English, and my story is similar to a lot of teachers right now, which is I knew I was burnout, and then there was an inciting event that kind of shifted my perspective. So I was pregnant with my second child and was like, I want to do something different. And I don't know what that is. And I stumbled upon copywriting. And then, like you said, really over the last couple of years, I've realized how much of what I have done, it wasn't like, oh, here's one career and here's one that's a totally different one that does not, is not connected at all. I found so many more connections through what I did. And convincing teenagers to read and write, and convincing district leaders to fund programs and whatnot. The art of persuasion is needed in a lot of different fields. And so where I find myself right now is, I've been full-time copywriter for the last almost 2 years, but I've been doing it for about 3 to 4 years. And I think the thing, and this is stuff we've talked about in our think tank, is that the values that I had as a teacher still are a huge factor in the clients I serve, and making sure that I'm providing a solution to their problems, and also working with people who are aligned. I spent 15 years in the service industry and just in the public school system. Now I'm in it as a copywriter. So it's a little bit of a snapshot. And yes, it started with me teaching Spanish.
Oh, that's so cool. I had no idea. So can you talk about, you said you were kind of recognizing that you were burnt out for a while. Can you talk at all about like what the aha moment was outside of being pregnant?
Yeah. And I think obviously this is important regardless of what industry you're in. And I think we've loosely talked about this, like burnout can still come back even as a freelancer and you own your own business and you manage your own time. But for me, it was just realizing that I think the first thing was realizing that my kind of creativity and drive was waning. And I'm a very creative person. I have, tons of ideas always. And I was losing some of that. And that was the first indicator, but I just didn't pay attention to it. I assumed I was the problem.
Buckle down, go through. I'm just tired. This is normal. Da 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 da.
Yeah. Yes, and just kept going. And then there was a more stressful scenario at work, having to do with school safety.
Mm,
That was like, okay, and I'm pregnant and this at the same time. Like, I'm going to just start to reevaluate. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to change careers. It was like, let me just explore. And I think that permission to explore, and yeah, I even think of our own businesses right now. Just
yeah.
because we've said this is what we're doing for this time doesn't mean we can't adjust and pivot. We have to constantly listen to what our bodies and our like output is telling us, because sometimes sometimes we're the last ones to know that we're burnt out. And
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And people are like, you look tired. You're like, thanks, I'm fine. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da is apparently my word today because I'm,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's really interesting. We are the last to know. And it's like, so how did you recognize it?
I think I just sort of had no choice because
Mm.
because I was pregnant, I was thinking about my child. And so I wasn't thinking about myself, I was thinking about my child. And so I think that just kind of separate me.
Interesting.
And
I
then
see
I
what you're
just
saying.
started, yes. So, and that's similar, like it was an out of body experience. I wouldn't have done that for myself first, but I did it for my child because I was worried about the stress that it was doing on my body, etc. And so then I just started, and this is like a huge lesson that I continue to practice, is I just started connecting with people. And I just said, hey, can we go out to lunch? Can we go to coffee? And tell me a little bit about your story. Because I think that in those connections that we build with our, whatever industry you're in, if you're feeling that burnout, there are people who are in different phases. And there's a lot to learn from other people's stories. And so I just was very exploratory. And I just said, let me talk to this person and see what their life looked like as they transitioned into this thing or as they took a risk here. And that seeing other people's stories really helped shape, oh, I am burnout and there is something different and I can fill this gap that I'm noticing.
I think it's fascinating how deliberate you were about that. Um, or were you? Was it something that just kind
Yeah.
of emerged, or it was very
It
deliberate?
was like these are my goals for 2019, put them on a vision board. And I specifically wrote who I was going to meet with.
That's really
Didn't
cool. That's
Yeah,
really
I didn't
cool.
expect to like actually change careers. I just was like, I'm just going to explore. And I think having a more general goal of like, not like quit my job, but explore other opportunities gave me, it like relaxed my shoulders a bit and allowed me to say, okay, I can do this. It's okay that I do this.
It took the
So
pressure off probably because it wasn't like, what am I gonna do? But it was more,
yes, yes,
yeah, I see. And I think it's really interesting to let go of the outcomes like that and see what happens. Um, Actually, that's my philosophy with conversations as well. I don't know if I've told you, when I first started out, I was not talking to other copywriters. I had a friend that I spoke with that was the reason that I opened up my business in the first place. I thought I was going to go into health coaching. And I'm really glad I didn't. But she's like, "Oh, you should consider this, the online business." I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." Um, but the people I was talking with were people who were potential clients, which is good. Like, you need to talk to them too. But
yeah,
it wasn't until I did the accelerator that I realized I needed to be talking with other copywriters. And I realized then it's like, by letting go of this outcome of what this is going to do for me, what I'm going to do as a result, it allows like some really cool things to happen and really cool spaces to open up of possibility. So I think it's so cool that you knew that going into it, because this is this discovery that I had along the way.
yeah. And I had a similar experience with the accelerator. I mean, I felt like I have community. I've had 15 years of colleagues, but I'm in this new phase, and it's not. I did not enjoy being on my own. I wanted people, and I felt the same way about the accelerator. And I think part of it was just that you're connected to people who are on a similar journey, and whether they are fresh out of college or whether they are transitioning careers, you find people who are in it or asking the same questions, because it's vulnerable to have a ton of questions. especially if you're, transitioning careers. You're like, I should have it together, but I don't. So I felt the same way in all the connections I made through the accelerator. And I think that was a game changer.
But it's funny, just now, 3 years later, I'm starting to reconnect with some of the people that I kind of lost touch with following graduation.
Yes.
It's very cool. So you discovered, so who was it, or how did you discover copywriting then? How did you figure out that this was it for you once you made the leap?
Yeah, there was a person that I worked with who kind of went before me, and she was one of the people that I reached out to just to like have a, let's just have a conversation. And she had started copywriting, and so she kind of like shepherded me into it. And then I found that because I was commuting, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and so I found the Copywriter Club podcast, and that was just sort of the game changer, because that obviously, like, I learned so much just by listening to podcasts, and it pointed me in the right direction of who to pay attention to and what books to read, or, and then I only told, and this is something in hindsight, there's this balance of like telling everybody and then telling no one. So there's a season where you don't tell anybody because it's all internal, and it's like, this feels like, what if this is nothing? But I had told one friend, and like a local friend, and she saw a posting on Instagram for somebody who needed a blog and email copywriter. And she's like, hey, why don't you check this out? I know this person. And so I found my first client that way. And so it was sort of this, like, I had somebody saying, hey, do this. I found the TCC podcast, and then found my first client, and was learning and growing all at the same time. And so that was a big shift. And so it wasn't that long. It was about, like, once I realized that I wanted to be a copywriter, like a month later, I got my next client and just learned on the go. Which is a huge testament to why it's like, you don't want to tell everybody because you still have your current job and you want to do that well, but then you have to tell some people because you need people in your corner to help direct you. And you can't do all of it in a vacuum. So.
No. And I think it's really hard to build a business too while you are still an employee, whether it's part-time or full-time, because it's like you want to focus on the things that you're excited about, but at the same time, and I'm not knocking the side hustle at all, but it's like, it's hard. And when I set out, I knew that I didn't want to keep doing, but I waited until I had quit before I started to gain traction, just because it was like, man, I couldn't even think because I was trying, you know what I mean? It was just, it was very difficult. So I am so incredibly impressed by people who can do that, who can say, I'm doing this thing part-time in all my spare time, and it's taking off, and it's mind-boggling to me.
Yes, but you're a mom, and you know that, like, when you have a goal for your kids, like, or if you want something for your kids, like, nothing else really matters. And so for me, my main goal was more time with my new baby that I just had. And so it was like, it didn't matter. I was like, I'm already losing sleep every night. Like, this year's a wash for my like sanity. I'm not working out. I'm not eating well. May as well just do it all and start a business. So, I mean, that for me,
yeah. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It is. So anyway, I am not heroic. It was just sort of like, I was a mom on a mission. And so, yeah.
And now everyone's back to school. Your oldest is back to school, right?
Yes. And the middle child is back in preschool. So, and we have, so that is, whew,
so there's only one at home right now. I remember like how good that felt, but then also it was like, oh man, there's no one to play with the youngest. Like, what am I going to do now? But yeah, we were talking ahead of the podcast or our live today, and was like, I was a mess the last 2 weeks, and it's like, this is not my first rodeo. I'm a kid in third grade, who went to preschool, I went to 3K, went to 4K. Like, I know, like, what I'm going into, but I was still just gobsmacked by how much energy and brain power it took out of me. This week is like the light is at the end of the tunnel, but I've told you, like, I've massively had issues this week too. But and you said you had similar problems. How does and this isn't your first rodeo. You used to be the one going into the classroom with these kids. So how what have you learned, like, from this year? I mean, I know what I've learned, which is like lower my expectations of myself even further for these couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think my narrative is that summer is going to be off. Like, I tried really hard to be very structured for 1 month, and then lots of play another month, and I thought, oh, that balance is going to keep us all in line, so it's going to feel like a routine at school, but it just didn't. Summer is different, and it just is. So I think it's a combo of 2 months of just all over the place, because you're trying to keep up with your business, but you're also trying to be fun mom and do cool things and go on vacation and go to the beach for the afternoon. And so I feel like that is its own like recipe for exhaustion, because you're trying to do so much. Then you get that like transition period. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this well. There's like no amount of planning that can make the exhaustion and the chaos of the transition to school smooth, especially if we're trying to make it smooth for our kids. Like, I think that must be it. Like, I think that we are so focused on making
chaos on the back end that they don't ever see, or hopefully they're not seeing.
Yes, because there's a lot of emotions going back to school for them. Like, even if they've done it before, every year. I mean, as a teacher, I had done it for years, but every year the first day of school was so much, the first week was so much, and I think our kids feel that too. And so as parents, I think that we shoulder that and try to, we're doing all these little things, making sure we don't forget the notes in their lunch and all this stuff to make sure that they have a smooth transition. So
notes in the lunch, I just like made a face. I don't know if you saw that. It was like,
no.
Oh, that thing I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to do that, and my son reminded me. I was like, okay. So, yeah. So I think honestly, Erin, I don't have like the magic recipe. I think it is going to be challenging because we're trying to do what every working parent does, which is like try to do both really well. And summer and back to school is hard to do that. So, on one day you feel like you're killing it, the next day you feel like all the wheels are falling off.
I feel like that's the entrepreneurial journey in a nutshell. Like, one day, and one of my friends who runs a very different business than either one of us, she's like, entrepreneurship is a series of failures and just enough success to keep you going. And I'm like, oh,
no.
Yeah, like that that hits hard. But I mean, and I don't think that's entirely accurate, but like at the same time, it feels like it some days, especially when it's like, oh, look, I missed a meeting because my mouse died and I couldn't get into my computer, which legitimately happened to me this week. And it is what it is. Like, moving on, like, I'm not beating myself up or anything. But what does that look like? Kind of to go back to the idea of changing careers, what does that look like if you are in the middle of managing chaos and transitional periods, trying to do whatever your day job is, whether your day job is a stay-at-home mom, whether your day job is super intense, like teaching, and you're back into it, or whether your day job is something entirely different, anywhere from like part-time to full-time. How do you keep the momentum going in this thing that you're trying to build, while also, because I mean, I know you're like, you really can do whatever you want to do, but how do you stay focused on what matters?
I think it's breaking it into small bites. So what's great about our work is, and this may not be true for every entrepreneur, but like, we book by projects. And so there's a season where it might be really intense because you're working on a launch. And so I think back to those times, I kept trying to say, okay, like there is an end for this particular project. So I'm going to hustle here and know that I'm going to get this time off. And then it's just kind of a constant check-in, like even just checking in with the people that you're currently working with. Like, making sure you're still, I remember having different checkpoints, like, am I still showing up to lunch? Am I still connecting with this person? But then also setting some boundaries of like, okay, there's some things I'm not going to say yes to. And that's abnormal for me. And so that was like, I did have to say no to things or ask somebody to take over things because I couldn't continue on at that pace and also build my business at the same time. So I feel like for me, it's always about tangible examples. Like, am I staying up too late every night? Am I connecting with this person? You know, though, like, am I able to take my son to the park after school? And if I wasn't, that's when I knew that things were off. And so I would look for those tangible examples of, okay, here's what I'm moving towards. But then also just trying to think of things in really like bite-sized chunks. So this week, instead of looking at the month and how chaotic it is, it's just, here's this week. And how can I structure my time? And yeah, it was just, honestly, it was like week by week.
I like how you say that, like, very cavalier, like, it's just a matter of this, but I don't think that that comes naturally for a lot of people. That it's like, well, how do I know? Like, what are the check-ins? So, like, what would you recommend? Would you say, like, choose your goal and why it's important, and then choose your non-negotiables during the day, and those are your boundaries? Is that like, this is a totally different approach than I've taken, so I'm super curious to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is like, I was in therapy at the time, and I'm a huge believer in therapy because you're reckoning with yourself. Because if you're transitioning careers, if you're an entrepreneur, I mean, I'm a believer, everybody needs therapy, but like, when you're making big life decisions, you need to be in tune to your body and what your intuition is telling you, and you can't hear it if you aren't giving it time. And so I was definitely in regular therapy at that time, and I think that helped me see that in myself and understand it. Um, that's like my first like practical suggestion.
Go get
Because you have
therapy.
yes, like you have to be aligned and be able to understand what you need. Because otherwise, like I said, you can't hear it. So when you're the last to know that you're burnout, you can't articulate what you need and how you should organize your time. So then I wrote down, I had like very clear goals of like, I had very clear financial goals. I had debt I wanted to pay off, and how much I wanted saved. I wanted to have 6 months of savings ready for when I quit. So I just created really tangible goals and then just reverse engineered it and said, okay, if this is what I want to do here, like, how do I need to get there? And so I just plotted out like, okay, I'm going to save this much, and then I'm going to join the accelerator, and then I'm going to save this much, and then I'm going to pay the debt off, or I think it was in reverse. But I think that's just it. Between the therapy and then the like addressing the money issues that tend to be stressful when you're making these big life choices, I just got really clear on what I needed to do to like what could take out the big stressors so that I can make these decisions. And for me, the first one was the financials. It's like, okay, how do I lift the financial burden of transitioning careers, making a big life choice? We'll pay off debt and we'll save a bunch of money. And then I had it like written everywhere, that like it was on my every morning on my mirror when I woke up. It was like, that's the first thing I saw. So I was constantly reminded, because we're busy, we forget.
We're so busy, we forget. Yeah. So what do you use to keep track of days, schedules, times? Like what's your secret sauce?
So I have multiple. So I have a physical daily planner that I use every day, and I have for a decade. And I write down, and I've gotten better about what I can actually get done in the day. So I am realistic. So I have just kind of my own method for what I get done. And then I have like what needs to get done that week. And then I cross it off. Obviously, I circle the things I need to come back to. So I have a rhythm for that. And then I obviously have a Google Calendar to remind me of things. And then in the background here, I'm not going to show you, but I have butcher block paper, just lots of chart paper, just like I did as a teacher. because a sticky note is not big enough to remind me of all the things I need to remember. So,
That's interesting.
yeah.
It's it's fun to talk about methods. I have a blank sheet of paper that I do, and I cross out all the days that I'm not available. And then what
Yes.
do I have? What are my deadlines? And I like to track meetings in my Google Calendar, because that way theoretically I'm
Same.
not missing them. Uh, but I also this lets me say capacity, because it's like, okay, these are my
Yeah.
deadlines. This is and at this point, about how much time each thing is going to take you.
Yes.
So, like, what can I do this week? What can I do this week? Where do I have room to like shoehorn in something else if I want to? Where is it like, nope, no more?
Yes. Yes. Because I think that's just it, because I need it physically written out. Otherwise, I will say yes to things. I just did this yesterday. Oh yeah, I can do that. I'm like, I don't think I can. And why did I not look? So anyway, I need the physical reminder. So big daily planner fan.
Yeah, I wish I could stick up with my daily planner. Like, I buy a new one every year. I use it for 2 weeks and then I don't. But this is
Well, that seems to work.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got. Well, we've been talking about a lot of things and covering a lot of ground. We haven't talked that much about what you do and who you serve, though. So other than like this brief mention of you do email and website copy, but who do you do it for?
Yeah. So the simplest way to say it is that values-driven companies, which can be lots of different people. So it ranges from ed tech companies to dietitians to therapists to where I'm working with an e-commerce company who supports schools through their merchandise, and so it ranges. It's people who understand. It comes down to like companies who are established, who understand that like this is their time to level up. They understand the value of website copy. They understand the value of email and brand voice, but they don't want to do it on their own, or they're shifting their brand, and so they want something different. So it's people who understand their people and understand that like they want a copywriter to come help them serve their people better. That's like the simplest way to do it. I'm with a designer right now, and she's really passionate about helping other designers who think that they have to have this full career before they establish a business and before they establish systems. And she's like, nope, you can establish all the systems right now, so that when you get your first client, you could do this. And she has a huge heart for inspiring people who were in her shoes a couple of years ago.
I love that, because you can always change your system, but it's real hard to shoehorn people into it once other projects are always in flow.
Yes. So I'm doing a sales funnel for her, and so that's just an example of like, yeah, she's a website designer. She's a course creator, but at the heart is she wants to inspire people that they can have this experience, that they don't have to, take clients, $100 for a logo or whatever it is. So really that like, yes, I have this thing that I'm selling, but I really truly care about the product or course or membership that I'm behind, and I want more people to have that. So, yeah, it's really great. I've stumbled into some really great companies and clients, and I'm really grateful for that. So,
well, I think you need to come back one day soon, and we're going to talk about like how you've stumbled into those, and like what your process is for getting clients, and building that network and growth. But we're running short on time, and I don't think we have time to unpack all that today. So in the meantime, I popped all the places that people can find you into the comments here so people can see that. But you have an email list as well. What kind of information do you send out in that, and how can people hop on?
Yes. So go to my website, CorrieMyers.com. There's an opt-in form at the top, and when a couple seconds after you scroll. But really the goal of that is it's the things I text my friends, the things I pay attention to as a business owner, as a writer, as a mother. So it's the intersection of all the things we kind of talked about today, which is who I am and what I'm paying attention to, the human experience. Because paying attention, it's it's a reference to a Mary Oliver poem, but I think that's our job as marketers, as copywriters, is to pay attention to people, to their how they make decisions, what they need, and how our clients that we're writing for serve their audience. So it's there's stories, and it's very light. This is not the email list if you're looking for lots of marketing advice. There are other great copywriters who do that. I weave in some things I'm noticing in like this week I'm going to talk about micro copy, but it's all at the intersection of motherhood, business owning, and just being a human being.
Awesome. Well, I encourage everyone to hop on Corrie's list. It's awesome. And in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been fun. And like I said, we'll figure out the YouTube piece, but and if there's anything else you want to leave everyone with, any final words of wisdom, please drop them here. And if not, then thank you very much again for hopping on.
No, we'll just have to get together and do a live where we're both out to dinner and we are speaking in Spanish. I think that's
yes. So we'll figure out when that is. When are we getting together? All right. Take care, Corrie. Thank you.
Okay.